Hi, my name is Aaron and I run a website called Forever Analog. It's a site that celebrates my love of home audio, receivers, turntables, cassette decks. There are repair articles available if you're having troubles with your gear. There is a link to a Discogs page where I buy and sell records. There is also a link to an Etsy store that has t-shirts that you can buy for the audio lover in your life. For instance, this is a shirt we designed for a Marantz stack of gear. There's also a shirt that simply says, "I will buy your records." And I call it my walking Craigslist ad because as I found out during the pandemic when I was walking around the neighborhood wearing that shirt, that people would come up to me, and a neighbor in particular actually asked me, "Do you actually buy records?" And I said yes, and he brought me 2 crates of great records that I was able to buy from him. So again, my walking Craigslist ad. If you're interested in seeing those shirts, visit the Etsy link in the description of this video or go to foreveranalog.net where you'll find a link to those as well. But today we're talking preamps. If you are someone who's been into stereo gear for a long time, this is going to be a very basic video. It may be a little too basic for you. I'm making this video for my friends who are just now getting into home audio and wanting to build a stereo at home. A lot of my friends grew up listening to iPads or iPods, or they have like Crosley record players, fine, and they're interested in building a better stereo at home. And over the last 6 or 7 years, I've been buying and selling vintage audio and documenting that on Instagram and Facebook. So I get a lot of questions from friends. And one of the main questions I get is, what is a preamp, when I post about it? Almost everyone is familiar with a receiver such as this. This is the very first vintage receiver I ever bought, my Marantz 2270. An integrated receiver, you've got a preamp and an amplifier in one box, right? But people are confused when I separate those out and just have a preamplifier and an amplifier. And they ask me a lot of questions about it. So I thought I'd make a quick video today just explaining why I would want to separate those out and what the functions are of each and how they work together and why you would need both a preamp and an amp to work together in your system. So first, for this video demonstration, I have 2 preamps here. Normally you would only have one running through your system, but I have this Carver C2 preamplifier as just an easy model that I can pick up, nothing's plugged to it, and turn it around and show you everything. I'm mostly using right now my home system, my new Emotiva PT100 preamp, which is plugged into my also Emotiva A100 amplifier. This is the system I'm currently using. I just bought this preamp off Facebook. They said it wasn't working. It's partially working. I'm having trouble with the phono input, but overall I need to kind of get in there and clean it out and take a look at it and see if I can get it working again. But I thought it'd be great to have up here for today's example. So I always tell people that the preamp, to me, I always equate it to sort of like the brain of your stereo system. It's taking all the inputs from the sources and it's deciding which one is going to be sent to the amplifier to be heard. And it's also going to determine at what volume, what tones, what balance, all those sort of things. It's making a lot of decisions as part of your audio chain. If you think about your chain, the signal path of your chain, at the very front you'll have your source, your CD player, your turntable, or a streaming DAC. And near the end at the very end you'll have your speakers. Near the end you'll have your amplifier. In this case, this is my amplifier. Its sole job is to power the speakers and send the audio signal through the speakers. So you really need something in the middle of that chain to take all those sources and connect them to one thing, and then have that box send it to your amplifier, which will then send it to your speakers. That is what a preamp does. A preamp is going to allow you to hook up all your sources, CD player, turntable, streaming DAC, select which one you want to listen to, determine the volume, and then send that signal to your amplifier, to your speakers. So as an example here, a lot of people also call the preamp a control amplifier, and for an obvious reason. It's where all your controls are. So for instance, on this C2 Carver unit, all the way over here is your volume control. Obviously you know what volume control is. You've got your balance control, so you can tune your speakers left or right depending on your room. Your tone controls, bass, treble, if you want more bass, more treble. This has a stereo mono switch. If you have a mono vinyl record collection, you could switch it to mono to listen to that. I mostly have stereo records, so I keep it on stereo. This has a tape monitor switch, which is common on vintage, not so much common on modern preamps. And then finally your selector switch. So this is the button that you would switch. Do I want to listen to my CD player? Do I want to listen to my record player? Or do I want to listen to my DAC? You switch it there, and then it sends that signal to your amplifier. So on the rear, you'll see all of the inputs. On a vintage one, you're going to have tape inputs, a tuner input, and your phono input, which is probably most important for most people. On my modern Emotiva down there, it doesn't have the tape inputs, and it has more digital inputs that I can use for, say, my streaming DAC. But it has a CD input, an auxiliary input, and a phono input, and I can put all those in there. Now, the most important output on your preamplifier is here. This is the main out. And what that does is you hook your RCA cables to the main output here on your preamplifier, and then you run those RCA cables into the input of your amplifier. And that is going to send the signal out from your preamp into your amplifier, out to your speakers, so you can hear your music. It's really that simple. So that's the main role of the preamp. A lot of people ask me, why do I bother having separate preamps and amps when I could just use my Marantz with everything in one box? The short answer is, after 6 or 7 years and a lot of research, I found that these vintage integrated receivers, they often, they're 40, 50 years old, and they often start to go bad. And, you need to replace the transistors or capacitors or those things. And when those start to go bad, it's really hard to locate what exactly is the issue. Is it in the preamp or is it in the amplifier? And so one of the things that I have found is that if you just have a preamplifier and an amplifier, it's a lot easier to figure out what the problem is. For instance, on this Carver, if I plug a turntable up to it in the phono preamp, it's not working, and I can't quite figure out why just yet, but I'll get in there and see if I can. If I had it hooked up to here, it might be I might be confused as to what exactly was wrong. Is it something in the amplifier or is it in the preamp? So by having these separate, it can sometimes make it a little bit easier to figure that out. Now, the other reason why I really enjoy it is because I like switching gear in and out. I like buying a lot of gear, and I like hearing how things sound. So for instance, this Emotiva amplifier, I could pair it with this Carver preamp, and it may have a different sound than the two Emotiva units together. If I didn't like that sound, I could take this Emotiva amplifier out and put my Macintosh MC2505 amplifier in, and I've got two vintage units. I've got the vintage Carver and the vintage Macintosh running together to see how that sounds. Or, I don't know, would it be interesting to hear what a vintage Macintosh amplifier sounds like with a modern Emotiva preamplifier? Cool, yeah, let's hook it all up and find out. It's just more fun when you have separates because you can just change things in and out more often. It's just easier. I guess it's not really easier. If you think about it, it's easier with just one box, right? You just take the integrated receiver out and you move a new one in, and there you go. But I guess you can get a little bit more nuanced as to how your preamp might sound versus the amplifier. And when you've got an all-in-one box, that's basically it. That's all you can do. Some vintage receivers will allow you to pull jumpers out of the back and only use a preamp and an amplifier, something I'll make a video about soon. But a lot of a lot of vintage amplifiers a lot of vintage receivers don't give you the ability to do that. So again, it's fun just to have these things separate, move them around and see how they sound. I tend to think they're a little less noisy when you have a separate preamp and a separate amplifier, but it's very, very small. I would never say that this 2270 was too noisy, but I just noticed a little bit of a cleaner sound when I had the preamp and the amplifier. The other last main sort of job of the preamp is to boost low-level signals. Now, your lowest level signal will be coming from your turntable. And if you've ever noticed, you can take your turntable, your record player, when it's not plugged into any speakers, and you can put your needle on it, let it play, and you'll hear music just very, very softly. You know, it's kind of like me, 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 me. You can almost hear the song. And that's basically the cartridge outputting a very low signal that you can hear. Well, most preamplifiers will have a phono preamp built in, and you plug your turntable into that phono preamp, and it will boost that low signal to an audible signal that's sent to your amplifier through your speakers so that you can hear the music appropriately. There's also standalone phono preamplifiers, but I most likely will make a video about those as well. So yes, these, like I said, I enjoy having the separates. A lot of people, just want the integrateds, and I don't think there's one right way or wrong way. If you've been buying gear for a long time and you think I've left something out in regards to explaining what a preamp's job is, I tried to avoid real specific RIAA curves and things of that nature, and just keep it real simple. But if there's something interesting that you think that I left out, please leave a comment below. If you have any questions, you can place those there as well. Like I said, I have a website called foreveranalog.net. Please click on the link in the description, and if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, so we'll be making more in the future. Thanks.